Hello, today we have more wholesome news about how developer putting his game on a torrent site made it sell 400% better, which is pretty interesting considering how much companies try to defend their products from being torrented, and here's an indie doing complete opposite and getting good results. Dev says games started selling 400% better on Steam after releasing Torrent. When top-down shooter Danger Gazers released on Steam earlier this year, it didn't make much of a splash. A week later, the developer Shota Bukuhidze uploaded a torrent of the title on Pirate Bay, nothing that there's no catch, no Steam-only features, just a fully functional game. In return, they asked players who liked the game to consider buying it at full price. Boku told Polygon that they estimate the gambit resulted in a 400% sales increase. You can see it in the Steam reviews for the game, where players note that it became an instant purchase the second that they say that the developer released a torrent for players who couldn't afford it. The game itself is not my cup of tea, but I'm happy to support the dev, one review says. Boko told Polygon that they're empathetic to players who for whatever reason can't afford to buy the game. I grew up pretty much in a situation where piracy was the only solution and way to obtain newly released software, Boko said. There are many individuals in such positions, those who can't afford to buy but eager to support in other ways, be in word of mouth, sharing it around on social media, or even in simple fan emails sending their positive feedback and appreciations. Boko continued. They note that while game development is a solo venture for them, over the last 4 years it's harder than ever to get players to know about smaller titles, which is part of the reason Boko took this time-tested road. Every little helps, they said. In addition to claiming a 400% sales increase compared to the release date, Boko says that Danger Gazers is now also on double the number of wishlists than it was on before. And it didn't stop there. Some kind individuals went out of their way to donate more than twice as much. The game costs $10, and I received countless emails from all the people who showed their support. I'm thankful that my message was clear and thankful for all of the support. I talked about this previously with some other gaming communities, such as with the RimWorld community, where developers think that the best way to support the community is to never put the game on sale because they don't want anyone to feel like they're invalidated with their original purchase because the game is cheaper now. And I expressed my disagreements with that because, once again, there's a very weird perception that people that don't have a lot of money to spend on games should not be into the hobby of gaming because the computers are expensive. There are a lot of arguments to be made here, such as they might have been doing better in life at one point and worse in another. Nobody's employment record is absolutely stable or spotless, or they're in absolutely perfect position their whole life. They could be in a country where hardware is cheaper, but because games are digital, there's no such thing as the pricing for their country, making the games cost disproportionate amount of their income. There are people that just bought hardware on pay monthly basis or bought really old hardware and can still play some games. So there shouldn't be some judgment that, oh, if you can afford the hardware to run games, then surely you should afford the games too, and you're just being a filthy human being if you can't. That doesn't help anybody. And his motto of releasing it on Pirate Bay kind of reminds me of some cafes that right now are working on pay-as-you-can basis, where you are free to leave how much you want in money for the food that you just ate. And it shows that people tend to leave more than what normally the food would have cost them, simply because they want to be generous because the place is being quite generous to them. It's a good faith basis, and I know that this wouldn't work if every dev tried to do this, because once again, This gave the dev publicity because they're one of the few rare ones that do this. But I do appreciate their mentality. I do appreciate them recognizing that not absolutely everyone can afford their game, considering the $10 price mark. I appreciate them acknowledging those people and not acting like they're somehow dirty or bad for just not having the money to purchase games. It also showcases another thing for the industry of the absolute horrifically required need for demos. A lot of people can afford the games that they want, but when they can't try the game, they're gonna be very, very iffy about throwing the full game's price at the game. If you can demo the game, on the other hand, you will at least have some sort of note about how the game mechanics work, about how their levels work, about all of that, and you will be able to make a better informed decision. The olden times, it used to come with like magazines or stores or whatever. Demos were a very, very popular thing. You could get your hands on a lot of free demos just circulating around, and then suddenly the digital age started where putting out a demo should have been easier, and all the demos stopped. And instead of that, a lot of developers just focus on making sure that their game is impossible to pirate, investing a lot of money into game protection and such, making the game take up more of your hardware just because they're phobic of somebody pirating it. And that's really not the approach that the game industry should be taking. So props on this dev. Props on the devs that release on GOG, because GOG is DRM free, so you could technically take the game folder and share it with your family, and that, yeah, it's something you can do. Props to devs that release on their own websites. I played some games that, once again, it's on the honor basis that you buy every single, game for every single member of your family, and that the developers do know that people will be sharing the game files around because they have absolutely no DRM, but they're not upset about that because they're expecting that people will share their games with their brothers and sisters and mothers and fathers. And props to companies that make crossplay easier so that you can share games easier, like Steam's home feature. Sure, you have to make sure that the other person is not using any games themselves when you're playing from their library, but that's still a step in the right direction. You don't want gaming to be locked, you don't want the copies to be locked, and you don't want it to be rich people exclusive. Yes, game developers need to generate revenue. Yes, games need to generate profit, but the less militant the industry is, the better it's for everyone, including apparently for the developer themselves. So what do you guys think about all of this? What do you think this entails? Do you think that this is a good practice, a bad practice? What do you think about the developer? I think that they're a wonderful human being, even though I realize that this is done at least a tiny bit for publicity, and I realized that it wouldn't work if everybody was doing this. But still, props for them for doing this, and props for them for having such an open mind when it comes to people that are too poor to get their game. And if you like my content, I know that I'm a bit yammering on and covering multiple different topics halfway, but I just had a lot of thoughts about this. If you like my content, please drop me a subscription. Subscribe. I mean, that's free on both BitChute and YouTube. That's just making sure that you can see my other videos. And hopefully I'm gonna see you on my next video.